Please rise for the playing of our national anthem and face the flag. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Josh. Awesome job. Well, good afternoon. As principal of Laker High School, it is my honor to welcome you all here today. This is the day that we have waited for far too long. I appreciate all your patience and understanding as we have made our way through these difficult times. Trying to plan for this graduation has been challenging, to say the least. Despite the many challenges we face, we have a lot to be thankful for. I would like to begin by thanking all who have helped in preparing to make today a special occasion. Starting in the office, Mrs. Lavasser, Mrs. Beers, and Mrs. Beachy have been phenomenal. Mrs. Zeal and Mrs. Sears have helped tremendously. These 5 ladies are truly an all-star team. Can we please acknowledge them? Our Laker custodial staff, led by Sam and Stephen, have been a big help in preparing today. Can we please acknowledge them as well? And to all who have helped preparing for today, thank you. I always like to thank our military veterans for their service to our country, and this year, I think it is appropriate to include law enforcement, healthcare, and first responders. You put your lives on the line every day to ensure our safety and liberty. We have come to know and appreciate how essential your service to our country is. Those of you in these branches, will you please stand right now to be recognized? Thank you again for your service. And now, to the seniors of Laker High School class of 2020. You have come through so much to get here today. I know it's easy to be bitter about what happened, but choose to be better. Don't look backwards, look forward. Stay positive, work hard, believe the best is yet to come. The quest for your purpose is not a straight line. It is filled with obstacles, victories, dead ends, delays, and detours. Your job is to stay optimistic and faithful on your quest. So congratulations, Lakers class of 2020. At this time, I would like to invite Student Council President Hunter Keim to the podium.
Good morning. To begin, I would like to thank Mr. Good, the secretaries, and everyone who helped make this graduation possible. They put more work in than we will ever know. Let's give them a round of applause. We have had one of the most unique situations in the history of our nation. Between COVID-19, riots, and many other crazy events, we have, without a doubt, had a year unlike any other. In spite of all these circumstances, it is a huge blessing that we get to be back together to celebrate our graduation. Some of you may have noticed that there was an empty seat in the front row. Earlier this school year, we lost one of our former classmates, Brandon Ricker. We keep that seat open in memory of the time that he spent with us and the impact that he had on our lives. One of the most fond memories that I have of Brandon was playing tag on the playground in elementary. To this day, I still vividly remember the amount of respect that me and my friends had for him because he was so much faster than we were. I miss the days that I had with Brandon, and I know that everyone who knew him feels the same way. He was a friend to many and a classmate to all of us. He will always hold a special place in our hearts. At this time, I would like to say a prayer for Brandon's family and for the many events that are happening around our nation. Dear God, I thank you for the opportunity that we have to gather here today. We ask that your peace be upon us as we remember Brandon and the amazing life that he lived. He will be dearly missed. We ask that you will be with our world in these difficult times and unknown. And we ask that you help guide us through. In your name we pray. Amen. Right now, it's hard to think of a time when life was normal, but a time that seemed to be free of trouble in my mind was elementary school. When I began to think of all the great times that we had in elementary, it would be amazing to go back and relive the glory days. We would have fun night, play Foursquare during recess, and learn how to type with those obnoxious orange keyboard covers. We might even be able to find the rainbow parachute in gym class and fill it with air as we took turns running under it. It is crazy how much we all remember from those days, and it is even crazier that we will never get to have that experience again. I wish I could just go back. Then we entered junior high. Girls were still gross, but life was good. The most memorable thing for me in junior high was seminar time. We were the first class of 6th graders that got to have games on our iPads, and let me tell you, we took full advantage of it, especially during seminar. There was not a seminar time when we did not go and play Minecraft together. And for the record, Mrs. Phelps, we did not have all of our homework done, even though we told you that we did. One thing that I will miss forever is the easy gym class that we had before Verber got here. Thanks, Verber. The craziest thing to me was when I heard that other people were doing this gross thing called dating, even if their relationships were just 11/11 posts on their Snapchat stories. I wish I could just go back. Then we entered high school. Just when we thought we were big, there were 3 other classes ahead of us, making us feel insignificant again. One of the things that made me feel like I was cool is when I got to drive to school for the first time. You already know I let my lanyard hang out of my pocket so that everyone knew I could drive. I hate to admit this, but this is the time where I myself began to think the girls were maybe a little bit cute. Another thing that I will never forget are all of those fun times that we had playing sports. That is something that most of us will never get to do again, and I know that many people in our class were disappointed that we had to miss this spring season. I wish I could just go back. Now we're here, and our high school years are over. Being away from all of you has made me realize that I am not ready to leave high school yet. I still have friendships to build, things to learn, and a bunch of unused try-hard cards that I need to cash in. When I was thinking about all of these memories, I began to realize that something was wrong with my mentality. When I was in elementary, I just wanted to be older so that I could go to junior high. When I was in junior high, all I wanted to do was be in high school. When I was in high school, I wanted it to be over so that I could go to college. It seemed to me that no matter where I was in life, I just wanted to be somewhere else. I realized that I needed to change my mentality so that I'm living this time of my life to the fullest, instead of looking into the past or future. We are the most unique class of all time. Let's make this time worth it, because we will never get it back. Let's make everyone else jealous that they didn't have a high school experience like ours. Instead of saying, I wish I could go back, let's admire this time that God has blessed us with and say, I want to make the most of the time that I'm in right now. Going forward, we have learned to make the most of every situation because we never know when it's going to be cut short. I encourage you to take advantage of every moment, whether you enter the workforce, college, or live in your parents' basement. Let's take what we've learned from our unique high school experience and apply it to our future. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Each year at commencement, I get the honor and privilege of introducing the Valedictorian and Salutatorian of that year's graduating class. And each year I stand in awe of what these students have accomplished throughout their high school careers. The two students honored this year are no exception. They have achieved at an incredibly high level in the classroom, participated heavily in co-curricular activities, and contributed immensely towards their communities. The sky's the limit for these two. Their futures are so very bright. It will be fun to see what each of them accomplishes over the next 20, 30, and 40 years. It will be no surprise to see each of them return in the future as a keynote Laker graduation speaker. Let's introduce them now, and we will start with the class of 2020 Salutatorian, and that honor goes to Emma Lee Irian. Emma is the daughter of Lonnie and Susan Irian. She has been actively involved in FFA, National Honor Society, Science Olympiad, Student Council, varsity sports, and the College Direct Dual Enrollment Program. Emma was honored this year as a member of the Greater Thumb All-Conference First Team in basketball and chosen as an honorable mention to the Thumb Sports Writers Association All-Thumb Girls Basketball Team. She was also named a member of the Huron Daily Tribune Top 50 Academic Team. She was also recognized as an all-conference scholar athlete all 4 years of high school. In the fall, Emma will attend Michigan State University to major in human biology. At this time, please welcome Emma to the podium.
Hello everyone in the class of 2020. For starters, it's crazy to think that this day has actually come. Quite literally. But besides that point, we are about to conquer a huge milestone in our lives. We are just moments away from walking across the stage, getting handed that diploma, and throwing those caps in the air as we all say adios to high school. But after all that, many of us will think, what's next? Sure, many of you know what's to come in terms of what college you're going to, what you want to pursue as a career, and the life goals you may have in mind. But do we really know what is yet to come? Right now, we are living in a world full of fear, uncertainty, and hate. It is in times like this where we may feel that our destinies are set on pause, which in reality, they're only just beginning. Quote, "Confronting fear is the destiny of a Jedi, your destiny." These famous words come from the one and the only Luke Skywalker. Oh yeah, I'm talking about Star Wars today. I have been a huge Star Wars geek since I was 6 years old. The lightsaber fights, space battles, the light side versus the dark side, and the adventures of Princess Leia, Han Solo, and Luke Skywalker. It's easy to say that Star Wars truly brings out my inner nerd. But it's not just for these reasons why I love Star Wars so much. I love it because of the lessons it has taught me, especially the one about confronting fear. Throughout Luke's journey of becoming a Jedi, he eventually comes across his deepest, darkest fear, what he might become. This refers to him turning to the dark side and embracing it like his father, Darth Vader. As he stood before the evil Emperor Palpatine, who encouraged him to give in to his fear, he threw his lightsaber away and insisted, "I am a Jedi, like my father before me." In that iconic moment, Luke fulfilled his destiny of becoming a Jedi by overcoming his fear of the dark side. When we think of the word destiny, we think about our futures. We have all questioned our futures at one point, as well as numerous times throughout our lives. With that being said, we think about our destinies as if the life goals we have made become a reality. As lovely as it could be to have everything come together as planned, we inevitably come across a point where we face adversity. Majority of the time, that adversity is fear. Fear is the biggest obstacle that can pull us back, and it comes in many different forms. It could be failure, rejection, uncertainty, repeating past mistakes, being judged, or simply being self-conscious of ourselves. Or most recently, the fear we feel when we watch the news. The COVID pandemic, the rioting, the politicians placing blame on one another. It's easy to feel hopeless when fear overwhelms us. Whatever it may be, we get so worried about those fears that we lose sight of what we want to truly achieve. We lower our goals and standards so we don't have to face those fears, which we try so desperately hard to avoid. When we refuse to confront our fears, they only become stronger and even harder to overcome. But the funny thing about fear is that it comes from here, from our own imaginations. We create our own fears by constantly imagining the possible negative outcomes. So you may think you are scared of something, but are you? We underestimate ourselves when it comes to fear. All fear does is limits us from seeing the bigger picture, who we truly are and what we are capable of doing. Because fear focuses on what might happen, not what will happen. So I encourage all of you, the class of 2020, to take a step to conquer your fears. We are entering a crazy, uncertain, and overwhelming world as fresh high school graduates. But we must always remember that fear only comes from what we think we're scared of. Just how Luke Skywalker fulfilled his destiny by conquering his fear of the dark side, so can we. Fear is the single biggest thing that is holding us back. We have the power to overcome our fears and to control our overactive imaginations. It's time to show the world who we are and how we want to make our mark, despite everything that has been happening. So, like our class of 2020, let's stand up to adversity, face our fears, and make it clear that our destiny begins today. Thank you.
At this time, I would like to invite Class President Haley McCardle to the podium. Let's please welcome her.
Before I begin, I would first like to welcome friends, family, administrators, and of course the Laker High School class of 2020. We finally made it. I'd also like to thank everyone for allowing us to have this special moment today. It is greatly appreciated, more than what can actually be explained. Now, I'm just going to jump right in and ask you all a familiar question that you have all definitely been asked before. Who is your greatest inspiration? Go ahead, dwell on it for a moment. Alright, now, let me guess. You mentally mentioned a few people, or maybe someone who you have never actually met. I can also guarantee that not one person here today said that they were their own inspiration. But why have we created the notion that being your own inspiration is a fractured thought, and that it cannot be a proper answer to this specific question? Trust me, I used to be the exact same way. I believe that for someone to be my inspiration, they had to be well known or understood by many. Someone like a sports player or Miss America that wanted to change the world. But today, I would actually like to share my story where I was finally able to understand that it does not take a special or specific name to claim the title of a true inspiration. During my 7th grade year, just like any other phenomenal story starts in junior high, I joined the school's track team. And some of you might be wondering why someone like me wanted to be involved in a sport that involves running. And trust me, that crossed my mind its fair share of times. But because of the influence of my parents, I decided to go for it and become a thrower. In junior high, I threw shot put, and in high school, I threw both shot put and discus. The longer I participated in the sport, the more I wanted to be successful in the game. And because of it, I began saying that Kayla Deering and any other female Olympic thrower were my biggest inspirations, simply because I wanted to be just like them. But I am here to tell you, a couple years later, I finally realized that sports cannot be my thing. Even if it is simply throwing heavy objects around in the grass. The same year, though, I was also dared to join the school musical. And just like any smart junior higher would, I went for it. I assumed it'd be my first and last show, and there was no way that you could get me to do it again. I was definitely wrong. Because as of right now, I have been in over 10 different shows and wanting to be in plenty more. I realized that in my last 2 years of high school, that the only reason I had any inspiration is because I wanted to be just as competitive and successful as them. But now I realize that because of their success, I wasn't able to truly see what I was good at and what I loved. I became my own inspiration. Because of these two completely different activities, and even though they were both huge parts of my life, they both left an individual impact, allowing me to find what I truly loved and discover what I was inspired to be. I can finally admit now that we all can be doing the same things. We can't all leave the same impact, because what all would there be left to do? I originally wanted to be an amazing thrower, but in the end, I was able to realize my true love for theater. Instead of finding an inspiration to follow, I became my own in order to create a story that I wanted, that I was satisfied with. Due to this journey, I'm able to stand here today and tell you, the class of 2020 and anybody else out there searching desperately for their inspirations, be your own. Create your own story, because you are the only one who is good at what you do, and nobody else can lead you or show you how it's done. When you finally discover that you can be your own inspiration, you'll be able to go a whole lot further and not have to be held down by anybody else's records or standards. Inspire yourself to create your best and most current form of you. Be your own inspiration. So to everyone here, I'm going to ask you one more time, who inspires you? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Haley. That was really, really well done. You know, when she was sharing that speech, I don't know if anyone else had the old flashback moment, the old Saturday Night Live skit, positive affirmations. Gosh darn it, I like myself. Okay, so now we move on to the introduction of the class of 2020 Valedictorian, and that high honor goes to Kaylee Moss. Kaylee is the daughter of Ben and Beth Moss. She has been involved in FFA, National Honor Society, Rotary Interact, and the College Direct Dual Enrollment Program. Kaylee is also the senior class vice president. She was named as a member of the Huron Daily Tribune Top 50 Academic Team and also a member of the Greater Thumb Academic All-Conference Team. In the fall, Kaylee will attend Central Michigan University and major in Communication Sciences and Disorders. At this time, please welcome Kaylee to the podium.
As I sat down to write this speech, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to say. So many thoughts and memories flooded to my mind, especially with our senior year being cut shorter than any of us could have imagined. I first want to thank all of my classmates for the memories we have made over these 12 years of school. Most of us have been together since elementary school. We've made friendships, learned life lessons, and went on many fun class field trips together. I remember in second grade when we went to Crossroads Village and we got to ride on a train, which amazed our second grade eyes. In junior high school, we saw each other at one of our cringiest, worst times. I think we will always remember the funny stories Mrs. Schultz would tell us in our earth science class. Then high school came, and we began to make lifelong memories together. One of my favorites was senior homecoming week. From beating the juniors in powder puff, to the memories shared out on the football field during our last homecoming game as Laker High School students, this week was packed with memories for me. It was the first time that I truly realized that our journeys at Laker High School were coming to an end. It is so crazy to believe that we are all about to go our own separate ways. As we all begin to write our own stories for ourselves, I hope that we all follow our passions in life. Passions are what excite us and will fuel us to achieve great things. No matter how big or small these passions are, following your passions is what makes us happiest. What is so exciting about this time in our lives is that we have an entirely clean slate. No high school clique has the power to define what our futures will be. Instead of having a high school label, we all have the power to write our own definitions of ourselves. It greatly excites me to think about all of the different paths in life each and every one of us will take once we leave Laker High School. Our graduating class has so many different goals for our futures. All of our passions are so very unique. From working with children, sports, astrophysics, welding, mechanics, makeup, and auto work, we all have such vast areas that will drive us and fuel us for success. I believe that as long as we always follow these passions, we will find happiness in life. As I stand in front of all of you today, absolutely terrified, I want to take a moment and thank everyone that has helped me become who I am. First, the people in my life who love me unconditionally and have always supported me. Mom, Dad, Jordan, and Colin. I am forever thankful for all of the support you have given to me. Next, I want to thank my closest friends, Emma, Haley, Macy, and Chloe. I am forever thankful. I will greatly miss the endless giggles we have shared together. And lastly, all the amazing teachers and faculty at Laker High School. You have all helped each and every one of the members of the graduating class of 2020 get where they are today. Now, I want to encourage all of my classmates to go find the people that have helped you get to where you are today and let them know just how much they meant to you. Class of 2020, we finally did it. Although we had a crazy, unpredictable ending to our time at Laker High School, I quite honestly think it fits our class perfectly. Nothing about our class has ever been conventional. Against all odds, we made it here, finally about to walk across the same stage we have watched all upperclassmen walk across, just a little bit smaller. I am so very proud of each and every one of us, and I know that without a doubt, you will all do amazing things with the rest of your lives. I can't wait to hear all about it. Thank you.
Good afternoon, seniors, parents, Laker staff and administration, members of the Board of Education, and guests. What a beautiful day we've been given to celebrate this special group of graduates. It appears that indeed good things do come to those who wait. I'd like to echo a special thanks to Mr. Good today, who has done so much to make this unique kind of a ceremony come together with his team. But kudos to him for his leadership and attention to detail that makes it possible to celebrate these kids. To say the class of 2020 has had a unique senior year would be the understatement of the century. They've traded traditional classes for online learning, sports and ceremonies for statewide shutdowns, and social events for social distancing. Certainly not the way any of these young people would have envisioned wrapping up their school careers. But this group of seniors is a special bunch. They've experienced disappointment and frustration, but they've responded with positivity and resilience. They've discovered different ways to get things done and remain productive. They've found ways to stay connected as friends, and they've shown that your circumstances don't have to dictate your attitudes. If the past few months were a capstone project to demonstrate that you're ready for the next chapter of life, these seniors would have passed with flying colors. But seniors, let's make sure these lessons you've learned are not left at the schoolhouse door today. Now, perhaps more than ever, our world needs positive thinkers and leaders. It needs citizens who can turn frustration and disappointment into resilience and productivity. It needs people who know how to build and maintain relationships and connections with other people. Class of 2020, is it possible that the things you've experienced have happened for a reason? Could it be that you are being called to a higher purpose, to take your experiences and show our world a new way to live and lead? I believe it is, and I look forward to watching your answer to this call in the coming years. Life is also a test, and I believe you have what it takes to pass with flying colors. It is my distinct privilege to introduce today's commencement speaker, Bill Comine. Bill and his wife, Krista, are proud graduates of the class of 2002 Laker High School. They are also co-graduates of Western Michigan University. Go Broncos. Bill's mother, Ann Zeal, is familiar to us all. She currently serves as the student support coordinator for our junior high and high school students. Bill, Krista, and their two sons reside in the Livonia area, where Bill is the lead pastor of Journey Church, a growing congregation where innovation, creativity, and love for all people are practiced daily. We're very thankful to have them back with us today to share with our graduates. Let's give Bill a warm Laker welcome.
Well, good afternoon. I want to thank the administration and everybody in leadership at Laker High School for the distinct honor and privilege to not only be able to participate in this today, but to have the opportunity to speak a few words into and over this graduating class that sits before us today. I believe that words have tremendous power, and I was not able to see any of the remarks that would be made by anyone else today. And as I share what I believe God has put on my heart to share with you today, I think that you'll see a common theme begins to emerge. So, class of 2020, I would encourage you to sit up and lean in just a little bit, because there is a theme emerging here today that is important. There's a story that some of you have probably heard, and it's one of my favorite stories. And the story goes that there was a young man who was the youngest and the smallest in his family. He was strong, but he was sensitive. He was brave, but he was also gentle. He was handsome, but he was a little rough around the edges. It's not about me. That was a joke. You can laugh. It's okay. He grew up, much like many of us, in a small agricultural community. His family's business was sheep. In fact, he spent most of his time in the fields tending to their family flock. His youth was spent working hard. In fact, this young man would have been tempted to feel like some of his youth had been robbed from him. He spent much time working, and it didn't really seem as though he had time to have fun in some of the ways that perhaps some of his other friends were able to. There were days that he even resented his father for constantly making him do chores and tending to the sheep. However, his experiences led him to a greater understanding of things like leadership and responsibilities, a proper respect for danger. He spent nights in the fields with the sheep, honing his skills, not just as a shepherd, but as a musician. He never played in a band, although I suspect he would have been okay with that. Even so, he was good. He was very good. And he loved to shoot. He spent time target practicing. In fact, on more than one occasion, he had to defend his family's flock against predators. He didn't have a gun because they didn't exist at this point, but he was lethal with a sling and a stone. This young man found himself, as many younger siblings do, feeling like he was living in the shadow of his older brothers. It often seemed, in fact, that around town he wasn't even known as a person, but rather people around town just knew him as so-and-so's little brother or Jesse's youngest son. He, like many teenagers, struggled to find an identity that was not attached to his family or what they did. One day, his dad asked him to take some food to his older brothers who were fighting in a battle. It was a rare opportunity to leave the sheep in the care of someone else and escape the monotony of the responsibilities that he had that had become a part of his everyday life for so long. And so he jumped at the chance. Any change of scenery sometimes is worth it. It was on this day that his life would change forever. That young man's name was David, and at that time, he was just a scrawny young sheep farmer. He had no way of knowing that he would go down as one of the greatest warrior kings in Jewish history, that his name would adorn the pages of Scripture, that he would be called things like a man after God's own heart, that his strengths and his weaknesses, his victories and his failures, would serve to teach us about ourselves and about God for thousands of years to come. This day that started with a simple request from his father was a day that he would find himself face to face with the man whose name, his name, would be connected to for all of time. It was a troublemaking brute of a man named Goliath. See, before David ever led a nation, he led sheep. Before he ever slayed a giant in service to his people and to God, he slayed predators to protect his family farm. Before he ever made it into the history books, he first showed up for work on time. David was not defined by what he had gone through, but what he went through is what made him exactly who he needed to be, the good and the bad, the exciting and the boring, the important and the mundane. And as the story goes, before David stepped out into the no man's land of the battlefield to face off with Goliath, a well-intentioned leader offered him his own armor, concerned for the young man's lack of battle experience and concern for his very life. David tried it on. He walked around in it. And after taking a few steps, he understood that this leader's good intentions ultimately were not going to protect him. Because of the fit of the armor and the unfamiliar nature of it, what was meant to protect him, what was meant to be a good gesture, would actually have left him more vulnerable. So he walked confidently out into the unknown, into a fight for the ages, with nothing but his own experiences to pull from and a trust that God had a plan for him. What we go through makes us who we are. You are not what you have gone through, but the sum total of your life experiences will always be the ingredients that make you who you are and who you need to be for the moments that you encounter. When talking about adversity in his life, a leader was once asked if he would change anything about what he had gone through. He contemplated for a moment, mulled the question over in his head, and responded very thoughtfully, and he said, "If I changed anything, it would change everything, and so I wouldn't change a thing." Class of 2020, what a year. That's the theme that keeps emerging over and over. There's nothing ordinary about what you are going through. And in fact, as some of your fellow classmates address you directly, not knowing a single one of you personally, it's become clear that there's nothing ordinary about this group of people anyways. There is plan and there is purpose that weaves through those seats out there. You are walking in a rare place in history. One where your graduation ceremony, it doesn't look like everyone else's. Your celebrations don't look like everyone else's. Your school year, your school career didn't end like everyone else's. And there is, no doubt, an honest temptation to feel some type of way about that. To feel a sense of loss, a mourning of experiences in milestones as they have been known. A feeling that maybe you got gypped. You may even sit back and say, "I wish I could change," insert your particular area of frustration there. There may even be some well-intentioned people who will try to share the armor of their past experiences with you, stories about their graduation, pictures of their senior year, providing a sort of borrowed armor for you to try to walk around in, to protect you before you step into these next chapters. However, know that the place of your calling and your purpose will often not be found while trying to walk around in someone else's experiences. The whole thing might leave you feeling like you missed something, and that's fair. Feel that for a moment, and then move on. Because what you need to understand is that to go where no one else has gone, you have to do things that no one else has done. To have an impact like no one else has ever had, you have to travel a path that no one else has ever traveled. To leave a mark on your city, on your community, our state, our country, and our world that no one else has ever left before, you must make your mark in ways that no one else ever has. And the reality is that those paths won't be found in the routines or even the experiences of years past. Class of 2020, you are primed and positioned for an uncommon impact because you stand in an uncommon place in history. You are primed and positioned to go places that no one else has gone because you are already on a path that no one else has been down. You are primed and positioned to see the world's strengths and weaknesses in ways that no one else ever has because you are already familiar with seasons that no one else has had to experience. It will be tempting to feel as though you got shortchanged this year. But I need you to hear me when I say that I'm not sure you didn't actually get the deal of a lifetime. Because you are not defined by your senior year, but your senior year will always be a part of who you are. You're not defined by quarantines, by COVID-19, by the weight of racial injustice, by riots, by marches. 2020 does not define your future, but it is and will show you who you are in this world. Because before you slay giants, working the family farm doesn't always seem glamorous. Before you lead a group or a business or a team or a shift at work, doing chores doesn't seem all that important. Before you realize that what you've been through is what you needed to become who you had to be for the next chapters of your life, it can feel like almost everything is pointless. And before you see that your uncommon path through your senior year is exactly what you need to have an uncommon impact on this world, it can feel as though you missed out. So I want to say congratulations. Whatever your next steps are, wherever your next steps lead you, each and every single one of you must understand that God has a plan and a purpose for your life. And what seems like an ordinary day at the end of a very strange couple of months, is your call to the front lines of that purpose and that plan. So steward the moment well, keep your eyes on the future, and know that everything that you've gone through to date is exactly who you need to be to step boldly and courageously into the next season. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bill. We appreciate those words. Very timely. And now, the class of 2020 is ready for graduation. We thank you for the memories you have provided us. We appreciate your individuality, and we applaud your efforts in the classroom and in co-curricular activities. We wish you happiness, a sense of purpose, and much success. Vice President Williams and members of the Laker Board of Education, I present to you for graduation the class of 2020.
I want to congratulate our seniors for their many accomplishments and wish them the very best as they pursue their goals in college, service, and careers. Principal Good, the Laker Board of Education accepts the class of 2020 for graduation. At this time, we will commence with the awarding of diplomas. The graduates and the administration request that the audience keep the ceremony a memorable and dignified experience by refraining from any individual recognition of a graduate. All graduates will be recognized together when the final diploma has been awarded.
Hunter W. Kine, son of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Lisa Kine. Emma Lee F. Arian, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Lonnie and Susie Arian. Kaylee R. Moss, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Ben and Beth Moss. Keegan M. Binder, son of Mr. and Mrs. Darren and Becky Binder. Aaron D. Bransky, son of Mr. and Mrs. Dan and Phyllis Bransky. Natalie J. Alexander, daughter of Miss Carissa Hayes and Mr. Andrew Alexander. Kennedy R. Bout, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Chris and Sarah Bout. Caitlin Y. Brown, granddaughter of Miss Karen Smithers and the late Orville Smithers, and daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Mike and Tracy Clark. Gage W. Brownell, son of Mr. and Mrs. Matthew and Carrie Lewis and Mr. Daniel Brownell. Carla N. Buchanan, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Patricia Buchanan. Alyssa L. Gretzky, daughter of Miss Stephanie Rudite and Mr. Lenny Gretzky. Logan S. Fritz, son of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Robin Fritz. Liberty H. Cloutier, daughter of Mr. Brad Cloutier and Miss Sherry Cloutier. Kai R. Chubb, son of Miss Jessica Kleba and grandson of Deb Autu Bukowski. Brianna M. Gretzky, daughter of Miss Stephanie Rudike and Mr. Lenny Gretzky. Isaiah A. Gray, son of Mr. and Mrs. Frank and Jackie Shively. Blake M. Gruber, son of Mr. and Mrs. Bill and Kelly Gruber. Chloe R. Guest, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Edward and Lisa Guest. Gabrielle L. Kessler, son of Mr. Corey Kessler and Miss Mary Schweigert. Isabella M. Heiser, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Kevin and Lori Trost and Mr. Roberto Ortega. Ethan J. Guster, son of Mr. and Mrs. David and Melissa Guster. Brent J. Krzyzewski, son of Mr. and Mrs. Jamie and Brian Parrish and Mr. and Mrs. Joshua and Carrie Krzyzewski. Riley S. Langley, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Bruce and Missy Langley. Aaron M. Laycock, son of Miss Lynn Laycock. Jordan T. Lebsack, son of Mr. and Mrs. Scott and Monica Lebsack. Logan A. Mauer, son of Mr. and Mrs. Wayne and Melissa Mauer. Brianna M. Mauer, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Vincent and Pamela Mauer. Bo A. Martindale, son of Mr. and Mrs. Shane and Carrie Martindale. Macy M. Main, daughter of Miss Tina Main and the late Mr. Bob Main. Caitlin R. McCardle, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Patrick and Gloria McCardle. Alexis G. Miller, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Mary Miller. Jacob L. Miller, son of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Mary Miller. Christopher L. Knoll, son of Mr. Stephen Knoll and Miss Crystal Knoll. Janine L. Rice, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Ken and Sue Rice. Jared R. Ryder, son of Mr. and Mrs. Scott and Dana Ryder. Dalton T. Peasley, son of Mr. and Mrs. Matthew and Kelly Peasley, and Miss Dennis Muther Pelletier. Addison L. Pasak, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Edwin and Eileen Pasak. Madeline J. Rosa, daughter of Miss Terry Mikula and Mr. Mike Rosa. Alex D. Schweitzer, son of Mr. and Mrs. Chad and Tracy Schweitzer. Tori M. Steinman, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Troy and Tessa Steinman. Savannah N. Stroud, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Matthew and Amber Stroud and Miss Crystal Hine. Bryce H. Sears, son of Mr. and Mrs. Craig and Tina Sears. Jalen S. Talaski, daughter of Miss Chrissy Buchholz and Mr. Jeff Talaski. Joshua M. Swackwood, son of Mr. and Mrs. Michael and Sue Swackwood. Angel L. Stump, daughter of Miss Jessica Hatch and Mr. Charles Stump. Bailey M. Van Valkenburg, daughter of Miss Gina Leach and Mr. Brian Prill and the late John Van Valkenburg. Jessica L. Veers, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Michael and Jennifer Veers. James T. Warren, son of Mr. and Mrs. Ted and Tracy Enns and Mr. Jim Warren. Joshua M. Weiner, son of Mr. and Mrs. Mike and Amy Weiner. Javen T. Wolschlager, son of Miss Shannon Popham and Mr. Scott Wolschlager. Madison K. Weisenbaugh, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Brian and Melissa Weisenbaugh.
And last, but not least, Haley McCardle, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Peter and Michelle McCardle.
Class of 2020, you've done it. And now, by the power vested in me by the state of Michigan and the Laker Board of Education, I now pronounce you graduates of Laker High School. You may stand and move your tassels from right to left, and let's give the class of 2020 a big hand. Congratulations. Go ahead and toss them if you'd like to.
You have to go back. Mr. Yoder. Hi. How's your summer been? Visiting? Nice knowing you, Mr. Yoder.
Pass the camera, we can escape.
Mr. Yoder, what's up? Is this rolling? Is that recording?